Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to dive into the conversation in a moment. First, I wanted to remind you that the show notes and links mentioned on this podcast are on my website at lizasivekmarketing.com. That's Liza with a Z and Civic with an S. So, okay, let's get started.
Hello, magicians, and welcome back to Marketing Myths and Magic. Always happy to have you here joining us. And I'm very happy today to have Jeremy Nicolaides joining us from the left coast, as we like to call it here on the right coast. Because we're directional around here. So very happy to have you. And I'm going to just warn everybody right now, I'm totally geeking out because this guy has been in the room breathing the same air as George Lucas. And we all know what a freaking geek I am about Star Wars and sci-fi. So we had a really great conversation before this podcast about all of that. And he works in movie production and does all kinds of awesome things in the movie industry, but he also has some amazing insights into marketing from that background. So we're going to talk about that. And I think you're going to learn a lot today. Pay attention. And, maybe he'll drop some cool names for us too, I already dropped George Lucas. Sorry, Jeremy. Took that one right from you. So hello, Jeremy. How are you today?
I am fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. A little movie magic for the magic today.
That's right. I mean, I just love being able to connect things to the title. It's awesome. I'm glad I picked this title. And if you haven't heard the music from my podcast intro yet, I was totally going for like Hobbit's Star Wars theme. Totally. So we are going to talk about lots of stuff today. So first, tell us how you came to be where you are now, what you're doing now, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's it's a massive backstory really by this point in life, but let me see how quickly I can get through it. And we'll definitely go through the movie business here. So it goes back early 2000s, about 2002. Is when I first started in the film business. I was an out-of-work illustrator looking to get a job, and I got this job as what's called a dust buster. And back then, everything was shot on film. So there was some poor soul that had to go frame by frame and erase the dust and hairs from the film scans. So that was me, 20 years ago.
What a glamorous intro. My goodness, right. What a glamorous intro to the business. Yeah.
Right. Like, here you go. Your desk is in the basement. No, but everybody was working on 3D movies in this particular business that I started in, that I got hired in. And they were at the time were working on Sesame Street 4D, which was for Universal Studios Osaka. It was a ride film where it's like 3D and it's the Muppets and, they blow bubbles at you and like the little air nozzles are blowing you. But it was really, really exciting. And I was like, this is so cool. And so I went just deep into 3D and spent all my time just learning about it and taking 3D pictures and taking every advantage for every opportunity I could. And I built up myself. I got to be a stereoscopic supervisor, somebody who's supervising the visual effects and the 3D image on screen. And what ended up happening is when Avatar came out, this is now like 2008, 2009, something like that. Avatar came out, and Jeffrey Katzenberg over at DreamWorks, they had How to Train Your Dragon, and everybody was like 3D. And so I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and got lucky where all of a sudden Hollywood was like, everything's going to be 3D, right? And so my value overnight really skyrocketed. And I started doing consulting jobs. I started doing things on the side. Like, this is when like the first entrepreneur, business owner, where I'm doing things where I'm not working for somebody else, right? Like, I still have my day job, but I was doing this stuff on the side. And one particular consulting job led to me becoming global creative director for this big global company. And they had hired me to consult on this movie in this like super short time frame. It was Clash of the Titans. They hired me for Clash of the Titans for Warner Brothers. And we're taking on what seemed to be an impossible task. And it almost was. I mean, we worked day and night. I mean, we're talking 16, 17, 18-hour days, 6-7 days a week. They put me up in a hotel.
Dude, more of that glamour.
Right. Yeah. They put me up in a hotel next to the studio so that I wouldn't have to drive because it was too
Wow.
dangerous for me to drive, right? And so I sat in a theater with all the other like heads of the departments, and groups of artists were just coming through the theater all day showing us stuff, all day and night. But anyways, what we ended up doing is we built this company from 50 people in LA to 3,500 people worldwide in 18 months. It was
Ooh.
LA, Vancouver, London, and Mumbai. And because 3D was exploding, we were working on everything, right? I mean, it was Transformers, it was Shrek. They flew me out to the set of Harry Potter from LA to London, like outside of London, for a 45-minute meeting, right? And
Wow.
it was in my contract that they had to fly me business class wherever if I went overseas. And like there was just different things. Like I got because my value went up overnight, I had an agent. And so she negotiated all my contracts. So she negotiated this amazing contract for me. And so like wherever they go. So I'm like flying, first class over to meet with the director. I'm walking around, like Hogwarts and Diagon Alley for this meeting. And it was super cool.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and I say this because I got to this point where I basically had this dream job, right? Like what most people would call a dream job. And I'm flying around, I'm meeting people, I'm having lunches and meetings, I'm like over at Christopher Nolan's, editorial house that's behind his house.
Oh
And
my
we're
goodness.
looking at, Inception before it comes out in like his pool, he had like this, it was a pool house, but that's where they had like a projector and the setup. And it's like really, really, really cool stuff. Like the cool factor was through the roof. I was paid really well. The company took care of me, but something happened, right? And I say all this because I'm not trying to impress everybody. It's something happened where I realized there was no fulfillment, right? There was something missing. Once the dust started to settle from the expansion, I began to have these thoughts of like, why am I giving up my life? Why am I giving up literally my life for these movies, right? And like I get it, like movies are awesome, we love movies. Movies can change the world, right? Creative people that create things, and entrepreneurs, people who create emotion out of nothing for whatever reason can change things. But I was just giving it all up and I didn't know why. And so the fulfillment wasn't there, and they were getting ready to close the LA office, and they offered me a position up in Vancouver, and I turned it down and I walked away. And
Right.
it was crazy. It was a bold move.
Yes. That's you really had to be ready for change to do that big a move.
Yeah.
So was that like your moment of reckoning? You've been thinking you're not happy, you've been thinking you're not fulfilled, and then they said, okay, we want to move you to Vancouver. And you just said, if I take this, that's it. I'm going to be doing this for a long time. Or is this just the opportunity to make a clean break?
Yeah, it was just weighing on me. It didn't feel right. Right. Also, I should say there was a secondary thing happening where I had met my now wife. So also, right, there's like this, like every good movie, there's also a love story somewhere in there, right? And so the second storyline is playing out where I've met somebody, and also this is increasing my thoughts of, okay, why am I giving up all my time for money, right? Like, why am I trading my time for money? Why am I trading my todays for some tomorrow? I'm literally like giving everything up, my health, right? I'm not taking care of myself. You can't take care of yourself when you're sitting in a theater for 18 hours a day and somebody's just bringing you hamburgers and French fries and Starbucks. And like, I could hear myself getting fatter. Like it was not good. Like I was so unhealthy. It was really bad.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I had to run the LA Marathon to get myself back in shape and like to get myself healthy again. But no, so going back to your question, it was just, it didn't feel right. I knew I wasn't supposed to do it. And if I did it, just like you said, if I did it, I'd be going down a path that just inside it wasn't what I wanted to do. Right. And so I jumped. It was scary, and I jumped, and it ended up being one of the most challenging times of my life. I bought a business. I had some time, right? I still had some time where I had some passive income coming in. I had lots of money saved up because I'd been working so much. And we bought this print. So my wife and I ended up getting married. We got engaged. We got married. We bought this business. Like right after our honeymoon, we took over this business that we bought. There's a print and marketing business. And I thought, and I knew it was like a turnaround business. It was a business that was struggling. It was one where the owner was ready to retire. He was done. He was just kind of letting it sink. And I went in there with so much confidence, like, hey, I just built, I'm not me personally, like by myself, but I was the creative guy. I was in the conference rooms. I was next to the CEO. I was like, we were all making decisions to build this company from 50 people to 3,500 people in a very short amount of time. I could turn around this little mom and pop business, right? Like, this is a piece of cake.
Oh, yeah, this is just what I do on my weekends, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh, the naivete.
I had no idea what I didn't know. And I don't know if that's good or bad. In hindsight, you think, well, like, had I known, would I still have done it? I probably wouldn't have, but that would have been such a shame because I learned so much. And what most people would consider like the worst thing they ever went through in their life really changed me for the better. The education that I got from that is unmatched, right? Like, I could not have gone to school and learned that, right? We can't, when we study, when we learn things and we read books and we take classes and courses and we do all this stuff, the education doesn't stop until you do it. Like, you actually have to do the stuff and get the feedback from the activity for you to really finish that lesson and that learning. So that's what I did that. And like, I thought, oh, I'm going to come in here and in 6 weeks, I'll make this thing work-wise, like workflow and production and all that. I'll have it all streamlined. It'll be easy and so efficient, and that'll be great. And then in 4 months, I need to have the revenue at a certain point, because I'm not trying to downgrade my lifestyle, right? The whole point here is to match the lifestyle I had, and this business was supposed to be fairly passive. I actually was buying it to support a landscape photography business. Like, I was like, I want to take pictures, but I need a business on the side that's producing income and supports my photography. And so I thought, well, like 4 months, it'll give me the time to get the revenue up, and then I can get back to taking pictures and whatnot. Well, a year into this, and the savings are gone. We've maxed out all the credit cards we can get. I personal loans from the bank, borrowed money from the family. We had no idea how we were going to pay rent at the beginning of the month. It was scary. It was brutal. It took forever. And it was that I didn't know what I didn't know, right? What happened is I kept hitting these trial and error moments, right? Where like, I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. Like, I'm stuck here. I need more revenue, or I need my marketing and my advertising or production. Like, I would hit some kind of wall, and then it was this trial and error. And then I would figure it out. I'm like, great, that was the breakthrough I needed. Now let's go on. Okay, here we go. This is it. And then boom, I'd hit another wall, and trial and error. And that's what killed me, was the trial and error. Just, it sucks your time and your money, right? It just absorbs it as fast as it can. And we're now in a world, luckily for everybody, where we have access to so much information, and it's almost kind of like on-demand learning, right? You hit this roadblock and, oh, let me do some research. Now, granted, as we know, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of information that's not great, but we're still in a position, if you can find the right people, right? Or the right podcasts, right? It was podcasts that was like the tip of the spear that really changed my trajectory, right? And it went from podcasts to coaching to masterminds. If you can find that right thread of knowledge and information of somebody that relates to your path, you truncate that trial and error, right? And now you can model somebody else's success. You can look at what's working from your competitors or other people, and you can really truncate that time so you can get further faster, right? And that's like one of the key things for me that I wish I had realized, that I knew in the beginning, right? It's something I'll teach my kids. Like, the answers are out there, and something that I do or that you do, right? That we might help somebody, we recommend somebody, we're working with people, let's try this, the testing and the trial and error, that time comes way, way, way down, right? Because it's not necessarily going to work for everybody the exact same way, because we're all different and our businesses are different, but we can certainly truncate that time and avoid the stuff that's easily avoidable, right? If that makes sense.
It does. And wouldn't it be nice if we could see the easily avoidable stuff from far away and avoid it instead of overthinking? and adding
Yeah.
silent, A to B and then B to C and then A to C and then B to D and then C to, yeah, we don't need to do that. And I think that when we're doing our own research, it's easy to get hyper focused. It's easy to overthink, and it's easy to get down the rabbit hole and into the loops.
Hmm.
So that's a really good point of truncating that trial and error so that you're still learning what you need to learn, but it's certainly more efficient.
Yeah.
Not, to the point where you're guessing, but where you're learning and not having to have this huge learning curve on everything.
Right. Yeah. Like let's learn from others. Like when people come to me and they're like, I've got this great idea. It's never been done before. Everybody needs this. They're gonna love it. Like as soon as I hear it's never been done before, I'm like, okay, well, hold on. Let's slow down. Can we find maybe there's something that's relatable, because you want that, like the competition, there's what helped me, like in the print and marketing, right? And in the printing side, I could look at companies like Vistaprint and these companies, these big companies online that were just dominating the space. And what are they saying, right? Like what's in their copy? What's the emotions that they're tugging on to get people to buy? That's the stuff we want to look at, right? When we say we want to model success, it's not like, oh, I'm going to give away business cards so that I can upsell them to something else. It's what are they saying in their messaging? What are they looking at? There's some kind of emotion that they are selling, right? Where we know the key to sales is selling the future. We sell the outcome, not the product, right? So in that, to do that, there's some kind of emotion, right? I recently, it was actually yesterday, we leased a new car, right? And so going through the whole thing of like, negotiating, and I walked away from 2 cars at what another dealer is like, and like really the car game right now is insane. I don't know if you know that, but they've got this
Yes.
chip shortage and it's bananas. But
So
one of the
same
guys,
story everywhere about in one way or another. Yeah.
yeah. And so I love talking to the car dealer guys, because I'm like totally watching how they're pitching and negotiating with me and what they're doing and the things they're saying. And I'm not offended by any of it, right? Like bring it on. I want to absorb it and look at it. And one of the guys told me, because I started just asking him questions about how they're selling and what they're saying and like things. And I threw something out, something like, the riches are in the niches and things like some kind of term. And he said, well, what we say is the feel of the wheel seals the deal. Because I said it must be easy to sell cars, because you just take people on a drive in this brand new car and they just want it, right? Then it's just like working out the numbers. He's like, yeah, like once, because people get in the car, they touch the steering wheel, and while they're driving, they're envisioning their life, right? They're envisioning
Yes.
what it's like with themselves or their family and what they're going to do, and what people are going to say when they pull up and they've got a new car. That's what they're selling. They're not selling, like, who opens the hood when they buy a car? Like nobody, like this is a car and I just got a new car. I have no idea what the engine looks like, right? Like I mean, there could just be like 72 hamsters in there on a hamster wheel, just like going. And like, I wouldn't care because my iPhone connects to the stereo, right?
Yes.
Like,
My husband is going to listen to this podcast, the former auto mechanic, and now he's an engineer, and he's going to say, I do. Why aren't you looking to make sure there are no freaking hamsters in your car? That's what he's going to say. But yes,
and he's absolutely right, but that's
not
not the reality.
But right, he does. That's why we hire mechanics to come look at cars that are used before we buy them, because what we should be doing anyway, and why he always looks at them for our kids when they bought it and stuff. So because most of us don't. Most of us are just like, this is awesome, and I want this car. It's the lifestyle. It's the whatever you're going to call it. And it's funny that you bring that up, because 2 people in my circle have just bought Teslas. And they wanted Teslas. And when they came out with the last model, they're like, okay, this might be the one I can acquire. And they both said that they're like, I'm just going to take a test drive. I'm just going to see what it feels like. And they ended up buying one within a month of that, or the same day. Because once you got in it, both of them, they don't know each other. They're in 2 different countries. Both of them said to me, oh, when you get in there and you drive it, you just, there's nothing like it. I mean, if you haven't driven one, you got to go drive one. And I'm like, no, apparently it's contagious, and I'm not buying it. So it's it's validating exactly what you just said. They are selling the emotion of being in that
Yeah.
car because they were
Yeah.
thinking about how awesome the car was. And that's how they described the experience. They weren't thinking about, well, this has this many horsepower and the wheels do this. And it, they
Right.
just know it feels great. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
So you like those pitches. That's good. Good to know.
You have to, right? Like you can't, I think it's something like people might be struggling in their businesses, right? They might be struggling in their accounts receivable, right? Like what's keeping them from asking their customers for their money, right? Like if I think there's certain things that some people are uncomfortable with, and sales is one of them, but it's what we do. It's what we need. Sales is part of business, and it's okay to sell things to people. People want to
Yes.
buy things. People just don't want to be convinced in a sleazy way, right? Like you don't want to be pushy and convincing, but you still want to persuade people. You still have to show those emotions, and if they want it, if it's a good match, then you can sell something. I think there's enough people on this planet that we can sell our products and services in a very respectable and moral way, but we still have to sell, right? And then we still have to ask for money. Like we still do these things, but there's these roadblocks. And I think those people that are, if there's somebody that has a business and they don't like when people are selling them something, that actually might be affecting their business and the way they sell, right? And I think you got to take I've in the past, 2 days dealt with like 5 or 6 different car salesmen, right? Salesmen and women. And some of them were the very like cliche, like I could tell this guy's pushy. And then like when it didn't work, he was frumpy and he stormed off, right? And it's like, come on, man. But most of them were like, just like kind, everyday people, just like, here it is, like, here's the numbers, here's the reality, and you work through it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be bad.
If the first question you ask me when I'm looking at a car is what color I want, I'm walking out. But you can ask me like 3 or 4 down because my car is purple and I did choose that consciously. But it's not that bright purple, people, dark purple, but I'm okay with bright too. So yes, you have to know your customer, and as a car salesman, you can't always be doing what everybody else does, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you don't want to bring it back around, you don't want to be the sleazy car salesperson who is just asking right up front for the sale without giving you any reason to buy. And I think I always tell people model success is a very good way of putting it, because I always tell my clients, don't just go copy what your competition's doing that you think is doing better, because you don't know if it's working. But when you're talking about something like, I have a small print store and I'm looking at Vistaprint or Moo or somebody like that, yes, that's somebody that you know is doing better. What are they doing, and how can I make that work for me? Because your customer could be slightly different. Your offering could be slightly different. You can't just put out the same promo and coupon code with your name in it. It doesn't necessarily work that way. But modeling that and seeing what they're doing that's working, not just the guy down the street you're competing with, that's a very, very good tactic to start with, and then work from there.
It's just a starting point, right? It's literally like and that's why I like to focus on the emotion of it. Like it's not exactly how they said it or the colors and the font. It's like, what are they communicating, right? And what's working. Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people don't think that they should have emotion in their ads, but every ad has emotion. Everything, the colors, everything is involved in how they're going to do that. We've talked a lot on this podcast about branding and about the message of color. And it's the same thing with the emotion. What emotion are you trying to convey? See, I'm saying motion because you got me talking about cars. Emotion that they're trying to convey about their product. What is it going to do to make your life so much amazingly better, whether it's business cards, cars, or upholstered chairs? How is that going to make your life better? And I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, what do they say? They'd say it all relates to health, wealth, and relationships. I think those are like the 3 core things that it always like leads back to.
Yes.
And even if you're selling something that doesn't seem like it relates to those, you're still relating to them somehow in your copy and the emotion. And you know, like with the business cards, for example, it's like when people, I'd want people to get these really nice, they'd feel really good. And I would do this thing where I'd have somebody close their eyes and I'd hand them a cheap business card that was just like cardboard, and another one that was like super fancy paper. And I'd hand them both and I'd say, which business makes more money? right? And they'd always just pick like this beautiful, soft feeling thing. And it's like, okay, well, it matters, right? I mean, business cards don't
Yes.
really matter in today's world anymore, but you understand what I'm saying. Like
But it's still
it's,
got to look good. If it looks amateurish, it doesn't matter if
yeah,
it's, you're the best place on the block. They're going to think you don't know what you're doing or that you don't have the money to back up what you say. So that's important. Yes. I got business cards that are made of cotton fiber. And so they're a little bit heavier. And I love the
mhm,
way they feel, and they're recycled. So that's nice. And
yeah,
people comment on how they feel sometimes. I'm like, that's right, because that's cotton. That's not just paper, people.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
makes you a
You
little
stand
different, makes you
out.
stand out, right? And it's
Yeah.
also square, so they can't just throw it in their business card pile and forget about it. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. A little bigger. It's like how could it be different? And yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. I get a lot of people say, oh, that's nice. Plus with my name, it's important to put my name across everything. So it's
Hmm.
good for them to have visually. But we have, and I talk about my name a lot because it's a big deal when I have to talk to people about business. So one of the things you're talking about here is basically finding a way to work smarter, not harder, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's something that you talk about on your website. Um, Modeling success, truncating trial and error. Like, so what are some other ways that you would suggest people look at using? Like, what other areas could they use that in their business
Yeah. I
besides just
think,
marketing?
yeah. I mean, it's every, when we start looking about working smarter, not harder, right? Like first,
Is
like
that what I said? I might have said the opposite. Sorry. Go ahead.
did I say that? Maybe I
No,
just
you
said
said it
that.
right. I think that I said.
It's working harder, not smarter.
Sorry, hold on. Let me have some more coffee. Moving on. I don't know what I said, but you guys can rewind and figure out what I said. So he said it right. Jeremy, working smarter,
Yeah.
not
Well, I
like
think
Liza.
we have to like it's a big thing, right? Like I think we're like bred to think that like the harder we work, like we got to work really really hard and we got to give up, we got to work long days and hard hours to be successful. And we have to break our mindset of the idea that our success is tied to our efforts, right? Like we can work as
Mhm.
hard as we want. It doesn't mean that you're going to be more successful, right? Like we have to take the right action. So by just by first just like breaking that idea, like let's stop that, and then let's look, you got to look in all areas of your business, right? Like you got to look in your sales, your marketing, but you got to look at your customer interaction, just producing whatever your product and services, looking at that in a way and saying, okay, how can I do this with less time? How can I take it? What am I doing that's not necessary? What's the most important thing that is, what is the task at hand here and how am I doing it? And until we start breaking that stuff down, we're overwhelming ourselves. The odds are the majority of the people are overworking themselves. We're stressed out. We think that we're sold this idea of the 9 to 5, right? Like it's really,
Right.
or it's more like the 9 to 8 or the 9 to 7. Like the 40-hour work week, I don't think is that common, especially if you have your own business, because you find ways to sneak in more time, right? And really that 9 to 5 idea goes back to Henry Ford, right? Henry Ford started the 9 to 5 because everybody was kind of like slave labor before that. And he's like, hey, you can come over here and work 9 to 5. You can have this nice job. But it worked then, right? But all those jobs now are done by robots, right? Like those are robot jobs. Like
Yes.
we don't have to do it that way. We have now the ability to look at everything, but we still, even though we have our own businesses, we come into it with the mindset of an employee, right? And so then we come over here and it's like, oh, I just, what's most important, that I sit in this chair for 10 hours today and just keep going nonstop. And really, you end up
Yeah.
wasting a lot of time, right? And like giving up a lot of your life. And so you got to look at what you're doing and see and take breaks. Like for me, taking care of yourself, right? And stopping and pausing, right? So literally removing hours from your business day will force you to be more efficient, right? One of the things I like to do is every 90 days, let's evaluate these very important stages in our business, right? Like for me, there's like 14 stages that I think are key that we have to look at, that are like sales and marketing and um, uh, from accounting, like everything in there, right? Customers and on all that. And so, but every 90 days you look at it and you say, okay, where did I go off the rails? Where am I successful? What are those KPIs, right? What are our key performance indicators? But when something's normal, when we're hitting the number, say, okay, this task needs to be at 10 and we're hitting 10 and 10 and 10. But now let's say, you know what, this task needs to be at 8. Like we need to adjust it. Like we're intentionally moving the line in the sand to make our lives harder. We're forcing ourselves to be more efficient. So for me, I literally took hours out of my day and I said, okay, you don't get to work 10 hours a day, right? You don't get to work 8 hours a day. You now have to do the same thing on 6 hours a day. That's all I'm giving you now. And
That's
so now it's like,
revolutionary, Jeremy. Don't talk crazy.
but in that time, I said, I'm giving that time back to myself, right? So when I get stressed out, I need to, meditate a little bit. I need to go for a walk. I need to move. And then I come back with this fresh energy and I make my decisions better. It's kind of like, have you ever gone grocery shopping hungry? Of course you've gone grocery shopping hungry. Like
That's
everybody's.
all I ever, whenever I go grocery shopping, I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. So.
Okay. But so when you're like really hungry, you end up making bad decisions in the grocery store. You're so hungry, like you're in a hurry, you might be cranky, you're buying stuff you wouldn't normally buy, right? And then
Like
so
when you go to
best.
Costco and come home and it's like, why do I have all these snacks and no protein? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that.
So it's the same thing in your business. If you're stressed out, if you're tired, if you've got this just this mindset of lack and like you're worried and concerned, you can't work like that. So by removing the hours, taking care of yourself, you're actually going to make better decisions and get through it faster. You can shorten your day, right? And again, like we talked about earlier in this conversation, not everything works for everybody. Like we have to, it's the individual and you got to look at what works. I can say, this is what works for me. And this can be a starting point for you. But at that point, we need to adjust and we need to watch you, right? And so then it's like for me going back to every 90 days, I look at my actions and I look at it and see where I can adjust and where I can fine tune. And in between, I kind of put up my hands and I enjoy the ride. Like, let's do this. Like, this is the plan. And so then we don't stress out as much and we're not in that state of concern. And then we can just be concerned and stressed out for like 2 or 3 days, every quarter, right? And then
okay, yeah, just those 2 or 3 days. Let me block those in right now. Which days those are going to be? Yeah, I think that
tell everybody to go away.
Yeah, right. So I'm feeling very guilty now, and I feel like these podcasts are great therapy for me because this is the day I've had is one thing after the other, and letting people call and talk to me in between, and being rushed when I know that today is podcast day. This is when I record my podcast, and I literally schedule it. So when people schedule a podcast recording, there's always a certain amount of time between them so that one, I can finish up and then go to the next person's information and do that so that I can have other days off, not having to do this if I have several in a row. I didn't do that today. So now I feel like I'm doing more busyness than business. And, that's one of the things that my business coach is always reminding our group. And that is, it should be productive what you're doing. If you're just running around and hustling for the sake of hustling, you're just filling your time and not doing anything. Yeah. And I think we fell into that as a society for a long time, entrepreneurs for a long time. And maybe like 4 10-hour days and a day off will work for you, but something should give. And I have been getting better about that, but you totally called me out here today. So
well, and some days are just like that, right? Some days are like that. It doesn't always work, right? And so when that happens, just let it happen. You deal with it and then get back to your baseline, right? I think one of the things when I was executive producer for this one particular company, and they still are owned by this giant hedge fund. And I had to do updates to the board every 2 weeks. I oversaw the global sales department, and I was creating like slide decks and presenting, future revenue and like all this stuff to the board. And what I learned by working with those guys, is that we don't need to, like everybody says, don't work in your business, work on your business. In fact, I had that printed out above my computer monitor at the print and marketing business, was like, don't work on your business. Because I was so busy in production and actually doing the labor, I wasn't growing the business, right? But I think it's actually, you got to think more like an investor. Don't be on the org chart, right? Like in the beginning, of course, like we have to go through all these phases as we build our business. But the goal for me and the people that I work with, the goal is to get to work over your business. Think like an investor. Don't be on the org chart. Don't be an employee to your business, right? Have this machine And that allows you to do what you want when you want. Like, I love doing this part about my business, so that's what I'm going to focus on. Everything else is going to be taken care of by somebody else or some automation, right? And that's what we're working towards. It doesn't happen overnight and it takes time. But with the print and marketing business, I got to the point where it was 80% passive. And that was the best I was going to be able to get that particular business. It gave me opportunities to bring in other streams of revenue. And that's what changed all of that and got me out of the financial struggle, was that mindset. And I think if we think about it that way and have that be our goal, like we all know our goal should be passive income, right? Like that's the goal. But instead we're working jobs. Like we've created a job instead of a business. And that's I think that's a big place that people can make a big difference in their lives if they just switch that focus.
You make a very good point, because we're trying to get away from the job. We're trying to work away from working for someone else. And you're saying, instead of seeing ourselves as, and I'm going for an analogy here, so stick with me. Instead of seeing ourselves as being our own boss, meaning we answer to our boss, like how many of us among my friends were always joking, I really wanted that Saturday off, but God, she's such a bee, talking about ourselves.
Right,
because when we were
right.
doing that in the beginning, we had to do that. But what you're saying is, think of yourself as the board. And then when you
Yes.
do work, how are you going to answer to the board? How are you going to answer to your investor? Because you are the investor. That's the mindset switch you're talking about here.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
I like that
Absolutely.
idea. That's a really good way to look at it.
And
And
then
it's a
you
good
can
way to
think about it.
practice.
Yeah, and then you can have multiple streams of income. I think we think of our business as like, if I grow and grow, and then we think about it in terms of our own income and the income. But if I do that, then this business, I won't have as much income. But what if you had multiple incomes, multiple streams of revenue? That wasn't just that one business, or you had different, branches of your business, and you grow it and you have different lines of revenue within the same thing. That's the mindset, right? And say, okay, maybe this one avenue, right? This one vertical of my business I've been focusing on, and I wanted it to get to $500,000 a year. Well, what if it only hit $300,000 a year, right? But I had this other vertical that did 2, and this other one that did 3, and this other one that did 50. Like, it eventually ended up being more, and you're overseeing the whole thing, right? But somebody else is doing it. Like, now you can oversee it from a beach chair, right? Now you can oversee it from a hammock, right? You don't have to
Right,
be there in the trenches. You got to get yourself out of the trenches, right?
right, right. That's right. So I can do it from the top of the mountain. I just have to make sure the top of the mountain has Wi-Fi. Actually, don't bother
Exactly.
me till I'm down at the bottom of the mountain, is really what I want to
There you
say.
go. Even better. Right.
Even better. Those are those days, right? Those times you're taking for yourself. This is
Yeah.
really good information. So you're not talking about just what you're offering people, what you're offering your clients. You're talking about a whole lifestyle change as a business perspective.
Yeah,
So that it's a
absolutely.
little of both. And you've already
Yeah.
lived it. You've already
Yeah.
lived it. So,
Yeah.
um, so tell me about your challenge, because this fits right in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so coming up, I've got the Work Less, Make More challenge. And this is the whole idea. That's it's working with business owners and entrepreneurs and even people who are starting, right? Like, so it works in the startup mentality, because it's all about knowing where we're going, right? We always talk about, we got to begin with the end in mind, right? But we got to do that for ourselves. And so it's backing up a couple levels and not just doing it for our businesses or for that particular product, but doing it for ourselves. And what's the lifestyle that we want? How do we want to live? How much money do we want to make? What do we really need? Like, how much revenue and cash flow do we need a month, so that we can now look at our business and restructure it, right? And how can we work less? How can we automate? How can we hire people? How can we rethink this whole thing so that you are working over your business? And the challenge is really to one, get that mindset shift. Like, people, it's not going to happen unless you know it can happen, and then it exists and people are doing it, right? So it's like, we know it can happen. Let's put this roadmap together, because for you, this might take 9 months. For somebody over here, it might take 6 years. But if between now, even if it took 10, if I said in the next 10 years, you could get to the point where you're both financially and personally free, right? Where you're not putting your money into some retirement plan that has to sit there for 40 or 50 years. And you don't have to give up your life for a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 9, for 30, 40, 50 years to hopefully have 10 years of freedom. But in 10 years from now, 8 years from now, you could be living a life that is, it's almost like being retired without being retired, right? Like, that's the goal. And managing it. And so it's different. It's so that the challenge is to help people put that roadmap together and get them on that journey. And it's only 5 days, right? 1 to 2 hours a day.
I can do that. I think we could all do that. But that 1
Right.
to 2 hours that we're not busy anymore. We have to give ourselves less hours and then show up for this, right? Yeah.
It's, it's the challenge for me is the challenge is I'm like, hey, you stressed out people, you're overworking yourself, you're working too much. Can you come give me 5 to 10 hours this week? And then, so
yeah.
I think you got to put yourself first.
I'm sorry. I think the idea of the work ethic in America has started out with Ford and everybody as come do your best work, do it well, do it thought through, into hustle, 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 hustle. Like we perverted it into busy is productive, and you're bringing it back, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So I love the idea of being a digital nomad on my vacation, so I can travel more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just happy to travel again at this point, but I'd to be able to travel, just go somewhere. But I'd like to travel more, but I'd like to be able to do it by, putting in a couple hours work and then going on with my day, or going on with my day and then coming back and doing a couple hours of work. And you can travel more when you do that. So this is the kind of ticket that goes right to it. I'm saying ticket because I'm looking at your website. It looks like a ticket. Nice way to leverage that movie thing, dude. So I love that. So you're working on this challenge. You're going to do this challenge. Everyone's going to go to that. That is at his website, goldenoctopillar.com, which sounds like a movie name. So you should just,
right. The giant killer golden octopillar is going to get you.
So it's not a romance? Is that what you're saying? So this challenge looks like a lot of fun. I think everyone should go check it out and go to goldenoctopillar.com. And how else can people get a hold of you or find what you're doing and see you online?
Yeah, so the website's a great start because it branches out from everything. But I'm on Instagram, the Golden Octopillar, Facebook, the Golden Octopillar. You put my name or Golden Octopillar into your Google machine and something will pop out the other side. But the website or Instagram, Facebook is the easiest and fastest.
All right, we will definitely find you because we want to do that. We want to work less and make more, which is what I'm going to say now instead of work harder, not smarter, whatever the heck I've been saying. So maybe that's just because that's what I've been doing lately, and I got to stop that. So you gave me a lot to think about. I think you gave all our listeners a lot to think about. Thank you so much for coming on. And we'll have to bring you back and let you drop lots of names about movies and just, have a whole geeky podcast.
Geek out session.
Yeah. I won't even put it online. I just want it for me. So thank you so much, Jeremy. And we're going to sign off, and we'll hopefully have you back again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow, another fantastic conversation done. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Don't forget that all the links mentioned will be in the show notes at lizasivekmarketing.com. And while you're there, if you're a business owner whose marketing is on life support, check out the Your Virtual Marketing Department offer and take the Marketing Health Report quiz for free. For less than the cost of a full-time hire, we can take your marketing from frustrating to lead generating with an entire marketing team. So check that out, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Marketing Myths and Magic, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can find us at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.